welcome to another edition of Pulp Picks. My name is Patrick.
I'm Fritz.
And we're here to give you this week's reading recommendations on another new comic book day. And some good stuff this week. It's kind of it's a weird weekend. There's like a ton of graphic novels that dropped this week. And it's kind of a medium-sized week, but we've got some exciting new titles.
Yeah, a bunch of good number ones, some of which might be on here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's jump right into it.
Yeah, so my pick this week is Blue Beetle issue 7. This is kind of like, you've been reading the series, Jaime, he's been dealing with, there's a bunch of new, differently colored Beetle characters showing up. The most recent one, the Blood Scarab, has been a real pain in the butt, kind of making problems for everyone. And last issue kind of saw the resolution to that plot, and it's one of those ones where like, we won, but did we really though?
Yeah.
Kind of like, so this issue is Jaime kind of dealing with a lot of the like emotional and like psychological repercussions of like kind of being party to some stuff that he didn't really want to do in the previous issue. But at the same time, he's been shanghaied into an adventure by Booster Gold to save Ted, who's kind of become like displaced in time. And it's basically all that kind of like plot there is an excuse to being like a fun little like homage and like send off to Keith Giffen, who sadly passed away last year, was the co-creator of the Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle and wrote a bunch of the stuff that like endeared the Ted Kord Blue Beetle to everyone via Justice League International. So it's basically kind of like the whole time travel thing is an excuse to visit like Justice League International. Ambush Bug shows up. There's Legion stuff. Lobo's there. There's a really deep cut on there that if you check out the cover, you can probably figure out who that is. But that's all great. But then it also does like have a point where like Jaime really gets kind of like unload and like just express like how much he's just kind of like suffering under all the weight of trying to be a superhero right now. And it's really great and emotional. There's a bunch of fun interactions, both on like the blah fun side and on the like, oh, you need a hug like fun side. Yeah. But it's great. The art is, they've got like a bunch of returning people that have worked with Giffen in the past, like Scott Collins and Cully Hammer. But it's a fun little send-off to Giffen. It's a fun little like capstone to the first arc of the current Blue Beetle book. And I don't know, I've been enjoying this entire run. It's taken like all the right notes from the recent movie while still like playing off of everything that made the character fun in the first place. But no, great read. You honestly don't even need to have necessarily like read the first arc to enjoy it. It's just a fun little standalone issue. But no, it's great. I'm happy that there's like a Blue Beetle book out there, because it's so many characters like never really get their time to shine. Yeah. And so it's nice when they actually like are able to get more than like 5 issues into a comic before it gets canned. Yeah. And doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon, so definitely hop on this one while you can. But speaking of, so this is like the continuation of an ongoing story. You've got a start of a brand new adventure. Yeah,
and speaking of people who created characters in that book, Booster Gold's creator, Dan Jurgens, has a new book, Batman the First Night. So this is kind of I guess it's an Elseworld story?
Yeah, well, it's a Black Label book.
Yeah, so this is not mainline continuity. This is the beginning of Batman's story being told in 1939 with kind of a new caper? I don't know. It's kind of, but the backdrop is, post-Roaring 20s, the Depression era. It has taken a massive toll on the world. Poverty and crime and everything are at all-time highs. The large cities have become dirty and run down. The rise of fascism in Europe is having an impact in the United States, which they directly talk about here. It's just kind of it gets you thinking again about where the world was in 1939 and how nobody at that time knew exactly what was going to happen in the next 6 years, and so it's really interesting. And that's obviously the roots of Batman and how he got started. Now, the the mystery that he's trying to solve, the crimes that are being committed, is that members of the Gotham City Council are being beaten and murdered. And so at the beginning of it, there is the third, I think, member of the city council who has died. And Commissioner Gordon is, trying to figure it out. And there are rumors of Batman. And then, ta-da, there we go. So it does kind of set up. It's interesting because, Batman is heavily based on the Shadow.
Yeah.
Right? Like heavily. We had the conversation about how Batman's first story is directly lifted off of a Shadow pulp magazine that came out a couple of years prior. So they do this really interesting scene where Bruce and Gordon have this interaction, and Bruce is the millionaire playboy whose wealth is so vast that he's unaffected by the depression, and he has this back and forth with Gordon, and it feels like a Lamont Cranston kind of moment, because he pulls up in this sports car and 1939 sports car, but you know what I mean, like it was just kind of cool. And it's so Jurgens for me touched on a lot of the late 30s feeling kind of stuff. So he tried using some of the slang and the setups, and the art by Mike Perkins in this definitely makes it feel like Depression era, big city, like mobsters could be running around with Tommy guns.
He's very good at giving stuff that very grit and grimy feel. Yeah,
there's this scene where somebody's sitting at a desk on a telephone, and they're having presumably a whiskey, and it's in a lowball. And the glass is just so cool, and it just makes it feel like you're in this office in the 30s with this mahogany desk and probably cigar smoke. And, it just... it was just very cool. Kind of like, I don't know if you've watched Peaky Blinders, but that kind of gritty kind of, where they get the general vibe of it. It may not be perfectly historically accurate, but they get kind of the vibe of it, where it kind of feels like, everybody needs a bath or a shower or something, but the world is just gritty and dirty. So, it's really cool. And, I'll say that the authenticity may not be totally there. I think it's being, it feels like a story being told by somebody who's definitely watched a lot of those movies from that era, though, and read some comic strips and probably pulp magazines from that era. So it's just this fun look back on it. It's really interesting. It's the very beginnings of Batman, and I know that they've done this 100 times, literally probably told Batman's origin 100 times, but I've just always kind of liked the idea of going back to that era with him, because it's so much more plausible that somebody would dress up like a bat and people would be afraid of them. And, in today's world, DNA testing would have Batman figured, we'd know Batman's identity after he showed up at the first crime scene, you know what I mean? So, it was a lot of fun, but I've really, really liked the Black Label stuff that DC's been putting out. Gotham Year One was really good. Swamp Thing, Green Hell, they've been doing a lot of fun stuff. So, I really enjoyed it. And the art for me in this was just, the matchup of the story and the art just worked great. So anyway, talking about amazing art and one of the it artists for the last decade.
I don't know about quite that, but definitely close to it.
Gotta be pulling up on it. Yeah, because it was pre-COVID, right? When the line in front of her booth got unwieldy and knocked everything over, and they had to get her out. Comic fans go crazy for...
Yep, it's Ultimate X-Men by Peach Momoko, writing and drawing. So, unsurprisingly, we've picked the other two new Ultimate titles.
Yeah.
And this one... So, this one was the one I was always kind of most curious about, because, both Ultimate Spider-Man and Ultimate Black Panther were, definitely, different from, the mainline. You could still, see the DNA in there.
Yes.
That was, clearly, pulling from. Whereas this, it's much more akin to her recent Demon Days comics she's done for Marvel, where, yes, this is definitely, X-Men stuff, but, it's through, such a different filter, and I absolutely love the filter here. It's just, I don't know, it was always going to be the most, odd man out of the three, but I think that's very much to its strength.
So, yeah, you're witnessing the origin story here in a much more organic kind of way, I guess, or an earlier kind of way for this character. And they didn't say the word mutant a single time in the book that I can recall.
So, like, a little context here. So, like, despite the title, like, the X-Men, as far as we are aware, don't exist in this world. Like, it very much makes a point of, like, as it's been established in some of the other stuff, like, Japan, or it's known as technically, like, a different thing because they've carved up the world into, like, different, like, prefectures. Hinokuni is now, like, is what they call it. But it's run by, like, Sunfire, Viper, Silver Samurai. Like, they're basically in charge. So, like, there's a bunch of mutant characters out there that are, like, part of this, like, evil cabal.
Under the Maker.
Yeah, but, like, as far as we can tell, like, the world at large doesn't seem to know mutants exist.
Correct.
But...
Or they've been repressed somehow.
Yeah.
Like, actively.
Yeah. But here we see fan favorite from the mainline comics, Armor. This is... like, kind of seeing her as the viewpoint character, her first, like, discovering her powers, all the stuff that she's going through. She's dealing with a lot of, like, very, like, teenage, like, centered stuff, like, trying to, like, find your place in the world, dealing with, like, a lot of the, like, drama, and it's hard.
Middle school bullies is a big theme in this book.
And, like, it's hard to get into, like, some of the stuff without getting into, like, too spoilery stuff. I will say, like, potential, like, trigger warning for some readers. Like, there's some, like, graphic, like, imagery and topics in this issue, but...
Yeah, it definitely has, you know, if you've seen much for Japanese horror movies, it's definitely got that kind of vibe to it, which to me was unexpected. Maybe now looking at the cover again, having read it, I should have been a little more prepared for that. But yeah, it definitely had some of those visual elements, especially, and it took on a very spooky nature.
Yeah, like because that's the thing, because like. It's like, there's elements that, like, oh, maybe there's, like, kind of, like, a more mystical edge to that. Is that misdirection? Like, I mean, part of the logo's got, like, a DNA strand thing. So, like, it's, which, by the way, I love as, like, an X design. Like, having it in, cool. Like, the DNA.
Yeah, I wonder who came up with that, because it's, once you see it, it's so obvious.
Yeah. But no, but I love this book. We talking about how there's certain, like, taking this aesthetic from, like, a lot of the Japanese horror, like, Hausu and that. I also love there's, like, a little end page that kind of, like, describes, like, the, like, meaning and symbolism behind a lot of the stuff, like, oh, why it's important if, like, someone gives you their second pin, or, like, what all these, like, little, like, charms mean. Like, it's just diving full on and just, like, no, this is, like, what it is, like, being a mutant, like, growing up in, like, Japan under all this. Like, I don't know, I absolutely adore it. I'm so curious, because, again, like, it's so different from the other two books. I'm so excited to see, like, how they all start kind of, like, interweaving with each other in that regard.
It's going to be interesting, and to see how, you know, how is the cast of characters going to be built out, because we don't even really know, you know, what that's going to look like. We've got basically two characters that were solicited, you know, as being the main parts of this book. So, you know, in 2 or 3 years from now,
and we really only meet one of them in this issue so far.
The second is is featured on the cover for issue 2.
And spoiler, several of the variants as well.
Yes, yeah. So we know that that's coming, but yeah, I'm very curious. It feels like Marvel wants to do the groundwork in a long-term, sustainably kind of way. They don't want to just rush in and throw this massive world at you right off the bat on any of these books. They're letting these books kind of organically grow and get a good foundation in, so that there's some real world building and character building that all of it can be then, you know, foundationally based on. So it's again, it's gorgeous. Yeah, this book looks amazing.
Her expression work in particular, because I know she said in interviews that, like, this is the first time she's really done, like, an ongoing book, because normally it's either just been, like, covers or, like, a more stagnated release. And you wouldn't be able to tell, because, like, everything in here still feels, like, just absolutely meticulously well done.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, she's very well known as a cover artist. Some people collect just specifically her covers. And sometimes we see that people who excel at covers struggle with the layouts in a book. And
definitely not the case here.
I was blown away by how well everything was placed in the panels, and the gorgeous angles that she drew certain scenes from were just awesome. But yeah, the composition's great in this book. So even if that kind of cartoony, I don't know, watercolory kind of...
Yeah, watercolor is definitely like a good way to describe like the color style here.
Kind of vibe isn't always your thing. I think it's executed so well in here with great fundamentals, compositionally and so forth, that it moves so smoothly from panel to panel. I loved it. I thought it was great. And I wasn't sure what they were going to try to do, because I thought that the announcing of armor being, a main character right off the bat, you assume like, oh, well, they're just going to throw Wolverine or Storm or, Cyclops or Jean Grey.
I personally love the fact that they're starting off with, like, not that Armor's like a lesser known character, like she's easily one of the more like breakout characters of the last 20 years, but I don't know, I like that they're not just like, it's not just like here's another like Scott in the original 5 story, because to be fair, we've also had a fair amount of that like the last 10 years.
Oh, for sure. I would have guessed that they were going to have that kind of original 5 or a team of high, the super high profile X-Men show up at the end and be like, welcome to the team, hop in the Blackbird. But anyway, that would have been too easy. Yeah. And I like this so much better. So
I love that I just don't know where it's going.
Yeah, no, that makes it so much more fun. Absolutely. If you're going to do an Ultimate Universe, why have everything, telegraphed ahead of time? Yeah. Like, let's take this someplace different. Let's do something fun. Let's do something new. So, all right, well, speaking of fun and new, come on in and check out all the fun new comics that we've got this week. If you're not able to make it in, we do have our website and the app. Be sure to shop on those. Follow us on the social media, like, subscribe, and leave comments in the videos. We always love to see those. But yeah, absolutely. Get down here to the shop and see us in person if that's an option for you, because that's we love seeing everybody and love having conversations about what everybody's reading. So until then, we will be back next week with more picks, and enjoy the reading, and we'll see you next time. All right.
Okay.
Enough gobbledygook.
Yeah.